Welcome back, everybody, to the next edition of Cardinal News Update. I'm your host, Tom Landon, and I am joined today by Cardinal News writer, Joan Vanorsdall. And Joan, where are you talking to us from today?
From Clifton Forge, Virginia.
And that is appropriate because today's episode, we're talking about a piece that Joan wrote kind of based on a response to a book by Deborah and James Fallows called Our Town's 100,000-Mile Journey into the Heart of America. It's a lovely book that came out in 2019, and I actually got a chance to meet Mr. Fallows and Deborah at a book event a few years ago, and they're lovely people. So we're not here to tear them down. We just want to talk about our area's response to it. And Joan, since this was kind of a response to that book, when you read that book, just a quick summary, what is the thesis behind the Fallows book?
Well, they spent, 3 years flying their single engine plane all over the United States, visiting towns that had, as many of us have, hit roadblocks in development, begun to lose population. And they wanted to get some sense of not only why this was happening, but how towns were responding to it, so that they didn't have to say, oh, well, our glory days are gone. And they found some amazing folks to talk to. I really admire the number of people in each town they spoke with. When I finished reading the book, I said to myself, as a resident of a town with 3,400 people in it, how relevant is the Fallows work to what I see in my town and the towns surrounding me in the mountains of Virginia, et cetera. And so I really began to think about what would it be like to do what the Fallows did, that is, visit a number of small towns in our mountains and try to get a sense of how they're coming back, if they are. And so over the past 3 years, I've visited 22 towns now in Virginia, West Virginia, East Tennessee, East Kentucky, Northern Georgia, Northern South Carolina, and Western North Carolina, to meet with folks, look at their towns, and get a sense of how creatively they're coming back.
What a great idea to be inspired by another writer's work to say, well, how does this apply to me? One thing that struck me is they were flying in a small plane, which is lovely, but that means you're going to places that have airports. And I noticed they chose some of America's hometowns as being places like Louisville, where there's 1 million people or so that live in Louisville. I mean, it's not a small town in America, is it?
No, not at all. And in fact, I think that the only town that was below, 8,000 people was Eastport, Maine, which is way, way, way up on the coast of Maine. And that was the chapter that I found most relevant to the work I do in small towns in our Appalachian Mountains. So I really began to think, there may be another story to tell here.
You talked about places embracing what they already have. And some examples you had were like Jonesboro, Hinton, West Virginia. Is that West Virginia? Is that correct? And some other towns. So talk about those examples or others that come to mind that really made you appreciate how some towns are really embracing what their history started them out as in a modern context.
Yeah, I mean, almost every town that I've visited has some aspect of that. They've learned how to understand their story and improve upon it. So it's not just, we're going to tell the same old train story again, but they're going to do it creatively. And so, for example, in Hinton, West Virginia, they are remodeling their train station. They have a 2-story West Virginia Train Museum that is well visited every year. And they're looking for ways to tell their story new. And in Jonesboro, Tennessee, which is the international storytelling capital of not the United States, but the whole world, everything about Jonesboro has to do with story. And so they have wonderful plays that they put on. And every October, they have a storytelling festival that draws thousands of people, each of whom spend about $800 each in their town. So they're working economically with story.
And also, storytellers are not like a raucous group that's going to show up in Sturgis, South Dakota, and tear up a town, right? They're that's a pretty good demographic if you're looking for folks.
Right.
In places like Clifton Forge, and also those of us here in Roanoke and the surrounding areas, the outdoors has become a huge focus. I think sometimes we forgot that we live in a beautiful place. Can you tell me a little bit about what your visits to all these towns revealed in that way?
Yeah, a number of them also are honing in on their outdoors story. When I think about Clifton Forge, we are 15 minutes outside of one of the 10 most respected state parks in the country. Douthit State Park is at the very top of the heap. At Douthit gets about 89,000 visitors a year. Now that's a lot of people coming in to enjoy the outdoors. So there's a whole flotilla of support industries that go into that kind of outdoors emphasis. I know Roanoke is also just blossoming as an outdoor capital. Prestonsburg, Kentucky really impressed me when I was there. They've taken a mountaintop removal coal area and completely redone it so that it has an equestrian center, bike trails, hiking trails, a beautiful upscale subdivision, and an 18-hole golf course that would just knock your socks off if you were a golfer. So, they have understood we were a coal town. This is what we were left with. This is how we're going to respond. And totally impressed with Prestonsburg. It's a wonderful town.
One of the things you highlighted was the importance of local people being willing to tell their stories, and especially you mentioned that in terms of St. Paul, which is one of my favorite towns in Virginia. What's going on in St. Paul that impressed you, and how are they telling that story?
When I went to St. Paul, I had the most amazing meal where at least 15 of the town's supporters came to meet me to tell me why they were there, what they were doing. And that included the National Organization of the Nature Conservancy. That's a really important piece of St. Paul's success. And, I would say that for small towns trying to find their way right now in the mountains, see if you can link with a national organization, their expertise, in some cases their funding, and, certainly their knowledge set and personnel could do wonderful things for you. So St. Paul just, on every single front, they had found their way forward. And I'm so happy for them. And Frank Kilgore, as when I was there, sort of the head honcho of the group, what a gifted man he is, both literarily as well as in terms of being a leader. So St. Paul's got it.
I just want to thank you for taking some time to talk to us here at the Cardinal News Update and Blue Ridge PBS Echo. And again, we'll put the address of the story on the screen. I encourage everybody to read that and to also subscribe to both Cardinal News and also Blue Ridge PBS Echo. So thanks so much, Joan. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.